What's up, gang? Hope you're doing well. This video is going to be a little bit different than what we normally do. As you know, I'm working on a big project. And again, I just feel like documenting things and might as well take you guys along this project with me. Currently, I'm reading Transforming Basketball by Alex Sarama, who's currently the new head coach of the Portland Flame. I believe they're the Flame, the new WNBA expansion team. I've known about I've gone to like clinics years ago, maybe 9-10 years ago in Australia on like a constraint led approach training, different small sided games, differential learning, a lot of things like that. But I was never I never read Alex Sarama's, who was probably one of the most popular people in the basketball space, and he kind of started this trend and this movement over in the basketball world. So I bought this long ago. One of you guys asked me to buy it and give it a read. And I've kept up with his content, obviously, and I keep up with tons other, but I figured it'd just be good to, now that I'm doing a big project on CLA and ecological dynamics, and I'm reading this book, it might be good just to take you guys on that journey and we can go through it together. That way I can voice my opinions and my thoughts, and then you guys can also give me your ideas and we can make those ideas stronger so that when I do make my video, it's been battle tested. So I'm going to go through this probably a chapter at a time. I've read this second chapter, so I'm up to the second chapter. We'll see what we get through today when we have this conversation. Basically, I want to just get out my ideas as they're coming to me, and then when we go chapter by chapter, I've got this all documented in all these videos. I can go back and look at them and reuse them in the larger video, and also have discussions with you guys. So it's just going to make my ideas a lot stronger. So first, I want to start off with my coaching style. I've never had a name for it, but this is all helping me design and really put words and verbiage to my beliefs and how I train players. I always believed in just like meet players where they're at, teach them what they need to know, work with them, like that sort of thing. But now I've started putting together philosophy to like help other coaches on that same journey, without having to listen to 1,000 hours of my coaching to to try and understand how I would go about a situation. So anyways, I've started looking a lot more. I've watched a lot of podcasts. I've already started reading I've got 2 books here. I won't spoil the next one because that we're going to do the same thing with that one. So many studies I've read, and there's just so much information out there about ecological dynamics, constraint-led approach, just so many different sorts of debates going back and forth. And I will say the feeling I get almost every single time is the people that are in the middle, which is the majority of coaches and the majority of humans in life. We're kind of in the middle. We're trying to decide like what's best. Is it the ecological dynamic? Is it traditional coaching, or the dominant approach, as Alex Rama calls it? And the issue is, it feels like you almost have to pick you pick one or the other. And typically in life, like there's a lot of gray area. There's no easy right or wrong. Otherwise, people just always do the right thing, right? If there's a button you could push to do the right thing, you would just do that. I'm firmly, like, from all the information I've grasped, just also over the course of my career and lots of trial and error, I believe, and again, this is where the wording gets a little squirrely, I believe heavily in a balanced approach or a 3-pronged approach. We'll get more into exactly my philosophies later on, where I can really voice them concisely. But every debate I've kind of watched, it's typically someone on the traditional side, or the more old school side, will say like, oh, I think using drills, so doing static drills, dribbling in place, shooting without a defender, I think there's a place for those. But I think you also need to compete, go against the defender, also do it with movement, also do these other things. So it feels like most people are in this space of like, yeah, do a little bit of everything, do a little bit of both. It requires everything. And a lot of people on the CLA side or the ecological dynamic side really have a bad view of traditional coaches, or really have a bad view of how coaches currently are. And it's the weakest argument. Usually they give the weakest argument, for the other side. So they will say only dribbling in place and not ever doing anything else is not going to make you a better ball handler than dribbling against the defender and having a time limit and trying to keep the ball away while also having to, look at a clock or look somewhere else. They're gonna be like, that's going to develop a ball handler way better. And then there's people like me who will go, well, yeah, both of those. You need both of those though. If you just keep throwing people into these impossible situations, they're not going to see success. Their argument will be, well, you can always you can always change it. But it's like, okay, we'll give that same argument to the traditional coaches, just dribble in place. You can always make them do a little bit more. Now we're going to run. Now we're going to switch hands. Now we're going to cross. Then now it gets reductive and we're not having a real conversation. So that's the whole point of this video. I took some notes on chapter 1 and chapter 2, but we'll probably just get through chapter 1 today, but I wanted to go through those with you guys. I haven't read it all, but at the moment, this book feels like a bit of a resume builder. If you have watched or kept up with Alex Sarama, he's kind of had a meteoric rise through the ranks of basketball. And when I think of skill development or player development, one thing that's really important to me is like the fact that you have to spend a lot of time with that player and you never know how effective. That's why there's not a lot of studies done on this and no cohesive ones, because skill development and player development, it's like a holistic approach of you can't just look at a player for I worked with him for 3 months and now he's the best player in the world. That was all me. There's just so much more that goes into it. Alex Sarama has not been, he's also very young. He has not been at a program for a long enough time to really, I think, see a lot of these changes. That doesn't mean if you go to a bad program and you're a coach that does things like, newer, updated stuff, and you're really putting in some changes, like, yeah, you can see a huge change really quick. But he's been brought into like G League and NBA. So for example, people were saying last year's team, the Cavs, was largely due to him being on the coaching staff. But then I'm like, yeah, but then they lost when they shouldn't have. They lost really poorly they performed really poorly in the playoffs. Like, is that also his fault? It's like, as a coach, like, I think it's one of those things, you shouldn't get all the credit when things go right, but I also don't think coaches should get all the blame when things go wrong. So this feels like a resume builder, the way it starts off and the way it talks about the industry not being on the same page. There are studies, and why don't we just use studies? Why don't we just use the research? Right now, people are just making stuff up and whatever. I think that, like I said, it feels like I put the title of chapter 1, I called it Fighting Ghosts and Strawmen. He makes a lot of assumptions in here, just basically saying like, coaching is bad, needs to be updated. We're still living in the Stone Age. And I'm like, yeah, there are a lot of coaches like that. And I agree. And I grew up with those types of coaches, but I've also had a lot of coaches along the way. Like, I've also coached with a lot of coaches that coach very differently and updated. And typically I don't look at it and say, this coach is bad because old school. I'm just like, no, he's just not constantly changing his ideas, constantly learning, constantly adapting. That has nothing to do with what type of approach he's using. That's more so just like stuck in his ways, right? So that's an individual coach thing. That's not a industry sucks thing. So anyways, chapter 1, that's kind of what I titled it. One of the very specific claims he made, and he does this quite a bit, and these are the ones I'm interested in grappling with. We can talk about theories and ideas and abstracts all day, and I was actually really excited to read this book, but it's actually been really hard for me to get through because I keep getting frustrated, mainly because I feel like this is a really important discussion, but the discussion isn't being had. He is advocating for why his way is the best way and why the other way sucks, and how he can change the industry. And like I said, that's why it feels like a resume builder. So at some point he said, there's not a point of doing 2-ball dribbling drills, form shooting drills, the shell drill he threw in there, etc. And again, my issue with this is, if all you do is 2-ball dribbling and in a very static form, you do it every day for 30 minutes a day and you're yelling at the kids and whatever, obviously that's not going to improve them past a certain point. But I advocate for 2-ball dribbling stuff all the time, because it's more so to develop your motor neurons, like doing different things, different actions, which if he saw my 2-ball dribbling workouts, he would advocate and say, well, that's because it's a constraint-led approach. That's ecological dynamic training. But I would just be like, no, it's tradition. It's still traditional, because it's like, you got to lock in. This is the drill. This is the purpose. Let's do this. So most coaches, I think, would have they would call it a different thing, but it wouldn't change the nature of what the thing is. So when coaches say like, never do this drill, never do this drill, even like 3-man weave, I've spoken about it in the past. I think it's the most overused, and it's just, most people do it just to do it, to say they did a drill. most of the times, like, it's kind of a waste of time. But if I had to steel man the 3-man weave, I'd say, okay, the kids are running, they're having to pass the ball, and a kid gets to shoot a layup. Plus, if you're doing it, like if the team has to make 20 in a row, it's like a focus drill, it's a communication drill, it's a talking drill. Yeah, it's not very fun after you've learned it and you're having to do it every day, but it has its purpose. Would I do it? Probably not, but that doesn't mean there's no place for it at all. So those are some of the issues I had there. Obviously, shell drill. Any coach I've spoken to that's like a elite level coach, almost every single one of them implements a form of shell drill every single practice. Literally every practice. Now, it's not the old school stand still and just blah, 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 but almost every single it's actually made me keep some form of it in every practice that I give as well. Just because, like, it's a foundational, you can constantly adapt it, constantly change the rules, but it's used in every single possession. So these types of absolutes, I just really don't like when these arguments come along, because he definitely is like, so imagine we were having a discussion about CLA and I proved to him that CLA wasn't good at a specific thing. That would actually devalue an entire book he's written, an entire philosophy that he's gone on this whole pathway with. So for him, it would be very devastating. But to me, it wouldn't matter, right? It wouldn't impact my coaching, wouldn't impact. So he's obviously does have a lot of bias is going to be with CLA and ecological dynamics and looking at the positives, then looking at the other side. He even talks about in the epilogue, whatever. Prologue, is that before? Yeah. He talks about how he had a really bad experience when he was younger with his old school traditional coaches. So it's like, yeah, you're using your personal lens to define an entire industry, and I just don't think that's very good. So the next one, so we've already talked about this, assumes most coaches are strictly dominant approach, which is what I said. You drill things, and that's pretty much it. And then that's your practice. And then game day is game day. You know what I mean? So just drill stuff, 5-on-0. We run our offense. We only do ball handling drills, and we do shooting drills, and we do these drills. No competition, no mix up. He's assuming that. And again, they call them rope repetition, like in, especially in fighting community, like martial arts, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's a very old school technical style of, like, you have to get the techniques right before you can have success. Bless you. And I'm, on paper and on face value, I agree. Like, that sort of old school style of teaching is bad. But from my experiences, again, I've probably worked with thousands and thousands of coaches, and I've worked with tens of thousands, probably 100,000 players by now. I haven't seen that. I see some gray area, or some blind spots that coaches have where they do this in some areas, but it's not out of that's their philosophy and that's why they do it. It's just an information gap. They don't know drills to do. They don't know how to improve this thing. So they just do, we're going to do box out drills, but not teaching it in the correct way and whatever, and expecting a good outcome. That's just an information gap. That's not a philosophical thing. So he uses the term evidence-based. The reason CLA is better, constraints-led approach is better, is because it's heavily evidence-based, based on studies, blah, blah, blah. Man, I've been searching through all these studies. For one thing is really frustrating. His book does a good job, like, saying, like, this study says this study said this. He uses a lot of quotes and a lot of people, and it's really good. But I'm a stickler when it comes to detail. And I'm the type of person that I'll go look something up, and if it's a little bit misleading or misconstrued, I'm going to assume all the rest of your quotes and all of your stats are misconstrued. So there's a couple research papers here, and again, I'll go through those specifically when I do my larger video. I've got my notes and everything. There's a couple studies that are done that kind of misrepresent some of the findings and outcomes. For example, some of the studies are like 10 players. They just did a study on 10 players and didn't have like a control group. So it's like these 10 players improved their shooting over a season, and it's like 17, 18-year-old boys. That's what it was 16-year-old boys had this shooting percentage for their season. The very next year, their shooting percentage after doing these drills and constraint-led approach, team-wide, it went up like 10%. So when you see that, you go, obviously, constraint-led approach is better. But I went and looked at the study, and then I started thinking about it. I'm like, hold on. I've been a coaching director, and I know most places in the rest of the world, they play under 18s. So that means if you're 18 and under, you're competing in one age group. So these boys were on a team where they were under 16, or they were 16 years old. So they're playing at the bottom of the age group. That next year, they're all upper age kids playing at the upper age of that age group. So you would assume they're all getting bigger, stronger, faster. You would assume all of their stats and everything to go up, right? Now, to encompass this study, ideally it's done over across multiple teams, and you also take other stats into account, because I would assume that free throw percentage, layups went up. I would assume their steals went up. I would assume all their stats, every marker that you can have probably went up, whether that was the ecological approach or the kids being 1 year older, right? So there's just not enough studies done, and the studies that are done are very, like, there's not a lot of information you can grab. There's something going on there between the dominant approach, where you only give like advice, hey, elbow under the ball, yep, do this, now do this, now do this, or letting the kids figuring it out on their own based on how they shoot. There is a difference there, but no, I feel like no one coaches just this way, and no one coaches just this way. So when you do a study based on those two things, it's misrepresenting where most of us are, right there in the middle. So that's kind of one of the biggest issues I've had with this first chapter and second chapter, is like, there's a study, I go look it up, and I'm like, it's not really giving as strong of a claim as what you're saying, but then you're now basing off a lot of other assumptions based off of that study and a lot of the other podcasts. And there's another guy that's in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that did a documentary that I watched, that he does the same thing. And it's really frustrating, because they mean well, and to them that study is reaffirming their belief, but based on, again, all I have is analogy and anecdotes, but based on everything I've seen, I'm like, it's not there. And if this were a statistic, like a heavily evidence-based thing, I think more people would just be like, yeah, we only do it this way. This part I found very interesting, and this is going to be something I really want the constraint-led approach. And if you believe in the constraint-led approach, which is fine, I want you to be able to answer this question. And this is one I've had a hard time trying to understand the argument from the other side, but I don't know if the constraint-led approach and ecological dynamics has yet to prove like skill mastery, or the best of the best, essentially. So Kobe Bryant, you listen to any Kobe Bryant story, the Bruce Lee, like, I fear the man that, not the man that's kicked 10,000 kicks one time, but one kick 10,000 times, right? Kobe Bryant, why was he so good? He's like, detail, get in there, work my pivot, my footwork, this, over and over and over. Ray Allen, he would sprint to a spot, turn, catch, and he wouldn't even shoot it. He was just working on his catch and turn, catch and turn, catch and turn, catch and turn. Same thing every single time. Like, we see it at the elite level. Watching Steph Curry shoot spot threes. I've even put this in one of my prior videos. Like, he does this, but he also does other stuff. We've seen him do some crazy stuff too for his workouts. The bell curve that I'm talking about, I feel like when you are teaching kids beginner level, very beginner level, so kids that have never touched a basketball, they don't know what a basketball is, or new people that have come in, they're like, look, I don't own a basketball. I just want to start getting a little bit better so I can casually play better with my friends, whatever. I think you start here. I think you start with drills. I think you start with giving them like, hey, this is how you dribble. Hand on top of the ball. Yep. Just like this. We're going to go right hand. Let's go 20 seconds, whatever. Let's go left hand. Try with your weak hand now, right? You show them what to do. CLA heavily advocates for throw them a ball, tell them to play a game. Like, hey, dribble to that line, dribble to here, do that. It's advocating you do those things. I think at the very beginner level, I think you just tell them what to do, let them get a little bit of confidence with what you're saying and like reaffirm, like, yeah, that's good. Yeah, good. Awesome. Wait, great job. And then I feel like you introduce the game. Yeah, go run around, play. I'm going to try to knock the ball away from you and you got to not let me knock it away. You know, just little things like that. So for me, the bell curve is at the very beginning, I think you do give instruction. I think you do give drills, which the CLA approach is heavily against. Static drilling and heavy coach direction, they're against that. But I think that's important at this first part. Once you get to this middle part up here on the bell curve, I think that's where CLA really shines. So let's say kids that play basketball at recess, or sometimes they play football, sometimes they swing, sometimes they get on the merry-go-rounds. They're just doing a little bit of everything. When that kid comes to your basketball camp, there's no point sitting there doing these technical drills the whole time. Just be like, hey, we're gonna play a dribbling game, because they can all kind of dribble. They all kind of have motor function of their body. Hey, we're gonna do a dribbling game. Hey, we're gonna do relay races. Hey, we're gonna do, you can make it more fun and be more creative, and they're improving while having fun, without you telling them, no, that's technically, actually that's going to be a traveling game, so we're not going to allow that in our game of dribble. No one cares. Let them dribble, let them have fun. That's the part of training and coaching that I think a lot of old school traditional coaches have trouble with. How do we develop games? How do we develop fun games that are also going to challenge us, make us better, but the kids are going to enjoy it and go 100% because they're having fun, they want to compete. That's where most traditional coaches get hung up. So I think drills, CLA training, ecological dynamics. But once you get to this other side of the curve, if this is Kobe Bryant and we're just playing games all the time, what's going on in Kobe's head? How do I win this game? Well, if I want to win this game, I need to, let's say we're playing a game where it's like, you get 1 point for every time you do this, 2 points for 1 point for every time you touch the baseline, 2 points for every time you touch half court, 3 points for every time you touch the backboard. I don't know, I'm making up 3 things. Kobe Bryant's going to go home and he's going to be like, okay, what's the optimal way to touch the backboard? Okay, so if I jump and hit the backboard like this, I can get whatever points, and I can do this and this. And it's like Kobe Bryant's already taking away the game and the whole purpose you put the game in the first place, trying to win. When it comes to winning, when it comes to mastery, when it comes to competition at that level, I really do believe the drills come back in. That doesn't mean you can't also do the ecological dynamic and have fun, right? Like Kobe Bryant still probably played horse. He still probably shot goofy shots or half court shots to have fun, shot with his kids and had fun. But then he also had a time where he was like, this is really lock in time, master this footwork, master this shot fake, master my body, my strength and conditioning. What's the optimal way to do that? What's the optimal way to go for longer? So riding the bike, like he talked about doing yoga and all those sort of things. Like once you get to that other point, I think mastery, drilling is important, and it's boring and people don't want to do it. But a lot of these people these people have come along and they're really advocating for CLA training, and a lot of coaches and people are seeing it and they're like, man, I tried ecological dynamics or constraint-led approach, and straight away I saw results. And so now it causes this feedback loop where those coaches or the people that are putting it in or coming up with these ideas are saying, see, look at all this success all these coaches are having, it must work. And I go, hold on, exactly what I said earlier. The people that are looking for more advice, looking for new ideas, looking for a different way to coach, they're already taking that first step of what I said earlier, right? They're already taking the first step of thinking outside of their old traditional ways of I do it this way because I've always done it this way. They've already taken the first step of curiosity. I think that is more important. The curiosity and constantly learning new things is more important than what method you're teaching, right? You can teach it. That's why I always talk about when our drills that we break down, our coaches that we break down, I'm not roasting them and saying they're a bad coach. I'm like, as long as you have a reason for why you're doing something, like you can always go back and refine it or change it. You could just go be like, yeah, that didn't work, I'm going to change it. Those are the best coaches. And that's why I know a lot of stuff I know, because I've coached it and I tried it and it just didn't work. So, and I've just had the luxury of, like I said, every year I was in charge of 30 teams. So that first year I had pretty much 30 different experiences of like, let everyone run whatever they want. And I saw 30 different problems that I had to solve with those teams. Next year, I'm like, nope, we're putting a plan in place to at least get this. So every year I started to understand what things are important, what things do you have to have, and other things, what's important to just be like, hey, you let it go. Let's have some variation. This is the part we don't want to control. So there's that. The bell curve, I think, is going to be very important to remember, like mastery. Yeah, similar to what I've said in the past, it doesn't address the difference between like skill acquisition and coaching. I've said this, like that Thomas Isolo clinic is by far one of the best clinics I've ever seen, because it just showed Dave Hubert, yeah, his was good too. Dave Herbert's was good too. He just wasn't as good as Isolo, and hadn't had as much practice as Isolo at the explaining part and communicating part. But he's also older. But Thomas Isolo did a great job of, like, he coached the team, but also showed you how they develop their skill, and also keep it like a point system, all those sort of things through practice. The coach can be the skill acquisition master too. I think we should all strive to be all those things, but this heavily, like I said, this looks like it's a resume builder and trying to get a job. This book heavily incentivizes like a player development industry, specifically needs to be a skill acquisition industry. And it's just like, okay, it's a little preachy, and it's saying like, here's the solution, when really just coach education will fix majority of these problems. Yes, they are big problems, and I like that he addresses them. I just disagree on the prescription, how we fix it. Yeah, this is the part I was already talking about. The coaches using CLA, they're already taking the critical step of learning and improving. One of the things he said here really frustrated me. I'll reread it, but I remember it now. It's coming back to me. Clinics are often just defensive or offensive concepts and don't dive into the deeper philosophical or theoretical. He said a lot of big words. And as I'm listening to it, I'm like, yeah, that is frustrating when you go to a coaching clinic and it's literally just like, here's the shell drill, here's transition offense, here's transition defense, here's an out of bounds play. And it's like, we didn't really get to dive in and talk about all these things. And then I've put here, the reason that is those clinics aren't meant for people like us most of the time. They're not meant for people that want to have deeper philosophical conversations, because those are one-on-one conversations. Those are hour-long podcast conversations. Those clinics are to give parents, people that are coaching are typically parents, or volunteers, a teacher. Like the majority of coaches in America are one of those three categories. Like they're not professional. So those clinics are typically to educate the majority of coaches. It's not really to educate the coaches that are already elite. And that's one of my biggest critiques of American basketball. We don't have a federation up at the top that's going to drip feed all the different levels of coaching and get us all on the same page. There are some elite clinics, there are some whatever, but there's also really bad clinics. It's just all scattered all over the place. So when he said that, it's one of those things that sounds really, a lot of people are like, yeah, they don't talk about deep philosophical understandings. And it's like, yeah, because most of the people are there just like, I ran a clinic. What was this? 2 months ago. I ran a clinic 2 months ago for coaches and players. And there was a couple, a husband and wife that had volunteered to coach for that clinic so that our coaches could they could evaluate players, but then we had stand-in coaches to just run the drills. So I was showing the coaches what drills we were doing, but I was teaching the kids at the same time. So I was kind of just running it so that organization could just come in and evaluate players. That's what they wanted. So I was working with a coach, and I was sitting in the room. It was the husband and wife. Everyone's shaking their head yes, right? Like, oh, I coach. And everyone's shaking their head when I'm showing the drills on the board, what we're going to do. Go into the gym. And on the way to the gym, she comes up to me and is like, look, I'm so sorry. I haven't coached in a really long time, and I'm really nervous, and I don't want to mess this up. And I was like, oh, no, you're okay. Like, this is going to be very simple. I'll run most of it. I just need you at the goal. Basically, just repeat what I say and whatever. And I was used to that because that's the majority of coaches I dealt with most coaches that are like that end up being really good coaches because they're aware that they don't know very much. They're aware that like, okay, there's so much out there. Like I'll learn. And she was like listening to everything I was saying. Yep. Okay. 100%. She was like on time, on detail, everything. Then the coaches on the other end that they know everything and they've been coaching for 30 years and they weren't even listening when I was talking about stuff. I'm looking and I'm like, hey man, remember we're trying to do it because of this. No, you got to, no, other side. I said other side. They were lost in the sauce, but they wouldn't admit it. And it was like my drills were stupid or the kids sucked or it was everyone else's. The lights are too bright. It was everyone else but them. So to me, that's who the clinics are for. It's to help those people have a little bit more confidence, the ones that want to learn. And then hopefully they go on their own coaching journey. That's kind of how America is built America. The biggest takeaway I had, I think this is the end. Yeah, chapter 1. So we'll end it here with chapter 1. The biggest issue I've had so far in all of my research of CLA, ED, ecological dynamic type learning, the podcasts I've listened to, probably 4, like over an hour and a half. One of them was 2.5 hours long. Listened to a couple debates. The biggest issue I've seen for almost all of these is that their theory, for the most part, kind of lies. The strength of it is in the destruction of other theories. So if you say, hey, why should I use the constraints-led approach? And if it's not a simple, quick answer, or doesn't have to do with like, well, because this other one sucks. It's like, okay, I don't use that other one, but what's good about CLA? So I think the whole framework of ecological dynamics is kind of off. What it's actually trying to do is understand the mechanics of how our brain sees, or whatever in our body, because they have an issue with you saying your brain remembers things too. I don't know why. How you can see a task or understand a task that's happening, go do that task, and how that makes you physically better for the next time that you need to do that task. How is that information being stored or processed? That's what this whole thing is about. I don't need to know that. I don't. And the problem with CLA is if you try to have a conversation on it, and you might see this in some of our conversations, most of the times people will say, well, you don't understand it. Well, that's why you're already using it. You don't even know it. And I'm like, dude, chill. I don't know how gravity works. I don't know, but I know the basics and I use it. I'm already using it. I don't know how it works, whether I want to or not. So it doesn't matter if I know fully how it works. I just need to know if I throw this ball up in the air, it's going to come back down. Some objects are going to be heavier than others. I don't really know why. I know in a vacuum, they fall at the same speed. I don't know why. I don't care why, but this is just how it works. This is how I can go win the game like Kobe Bryant's going to do, right? So if I have to read a bunch of books and do a lot of research and do all those things to understand the theory, I don't think it's a very good theory. Not that it's not good, it's just not there yet. I'll meet you guys at the finish line. Whenever you complete the theory and science comes out and says it's 100% way better, boom, I'll just jump on board. I don't need to guess which one's right. I don't need to sell books. I don't need to sell products. I just want to use what's best. But at the moment, there's still a little bit of both. So with chapter 1, that's how I left feeling. It was a whole lot of dunking on other theories and other theories' straw man arguments that I just haven't heard made. They talked about, there's a couple times where Alex picked out the Bruce Lee quote actually in chapter 2, oddly enough, and goes, so I know Bruce Lee said that you got to practice kicks 10,000 times. What he really meant was, there's a bunch of those. There's a Diana Taurasi quote in chapter 2 where she said, when shooting, it's more like a feel. There's no science behind it, like a feel. So he took that quote and was like, see, it's just a feeling. But that kind of negates Diana Taurasi all the other times where she talked about how much time and effort she put into it, what she looks at with shooting. It kind of just negates a bunch of those things. So anytime someone's trying to sell you something or sell you on an idea or teach you something, if it's very complicated, again, what are my philosophies? Full speed right, full speed left. I don't care if it's the dig step, negative step. I talk about onside step, but if you just go full speed right, full speed left, you're good. You're winning half the battle. We got to find ways to simplify our philosophy, simplify everything, make it easier to understand. We don't have to build it off the back of the destruction of other things or stuff that we've learned in the past. But at the same time, like having good conversations around it and not either or. It can be both and. I think so. So anyways, I'm really interested to see what you guys think. I think this will be a fun little project that we have going over here. I'll just put these videos out every once in a while. Honestly, this might become a Patreon thing. Maybe I'll start putting these videos over on Patreon if this doesn't do well, or if it disrupts things too much. But yeah, Transforming Basketball, you guys, if you do have it, you can read along with me. I've got another book here that I'm going through. I got 2 more books that I'm going to be going through. by the time I have this video done, hopefully. And I've got a couple conversations too with people in the industry that you might find interesting. So let me know what you guys think. And if you like this, if you like the direction of this going, or if you'd rather me just go put that on Patreon and just shut up and dribble, shut up and watch some game film. Anyways, take care, guys. Love you. See you.